time for the GeoGeeks, our regular segment where we bring in a subject matter expert to tell us what's noteworthy in one of our core ArcGIS products.
And that means it is the triumphant return of Sue Enyedy. She is our resident GeoGeek on all things field operations, and I'm pretty sure she just got back from a vacation up in the forest in the north. So Sue,
Great.
welcome back to the pod.
Well, thank you for having me, Mark and Maggie. Always happy to be
Yes,
here.
indeed. And I'm sure on your vacation you had your field apps or field maps app
I
roaming
did.
around with you all the
I was
time.
canoeing around with field maps, and I'm going to be backpacking with field maps this weekend. So,
Right. And that probably leads to our discussion today because I'm sure they don't have great internet access up in the north. So we're going to
no.
talk a bit about how you could use ArcGIS Field Maps offline. So maybe to begin, explain what the concept of that is and what are some primary use cases or scenarios for offline use?
Sure. So, Field Maps is a map-based app for field data collection as well as read-only exploration. And by default, it works in a connected environment because you're working with a web map and web layers. So this means it requires either a cellular signal or a Wi-Fi signal. And for many of our users, this works really well because you're usually in a more urban environment, or even in some rural environments, we all have some kind of cellular coverage. But as you mentioned, when you're kind of more in a remote location, such as northern parts of our provinces and territories, you may have nothing. You may have no Wi-Fi, no cellular. And this is typical for a lot of our resource-based users. So example, in forestry or mining or other resource extraction or conservation industries, they can't work with web maps and layers. So this is affecting a lot of our key users because they use the field maps to manage all their assets and know where their employees are in the field. So for this reason, we have specific tools and workflows in field maps that allow for preparing your maps and data before you go offline, and steps for the mobile user that they need to complete so they can work once they become disconnected.
So, what are the steps that people would need to do to work offline? Because I know it's definitely useful, but how do you even get started with that?
Yeah, well, it's not automatic. So there's a few things you need to do. There's a web component of Field Maps. It's called Field Maps Designer, and you access it from your ArcGIS organization, whether that's ArcGIS or Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. And typically, this might be a GIS analyst or a GIS coordinator who is preparing the maps and data for the mobile worker. And in Field Maps, there's an option to turn offline on. And what happens when you do this is Field Maps will check your map. It will check all the content, your layers, whether they're editing layers or only reference. It will check your tables and your base maps and make sure that they're enabled for offline. And if you're not for anything, you will get a little red X and it will tell you what is the error. And you need to fix that before you can take that map and the content offline. And things can happen like you don't have sync enabled for your layer, or you have an unsupported layer type or a duplicate layer. Even for your base maps, ArcGIS Online base maps are supported automatically. But if you're using your own base map or working with ArcGIS Enterprise, there might be some extra steps. So you would need to first fix those. And then once you have your map and content offline enabled, then you have a choice of 3 actually different workflows you can enable for offline. And you can use any one of these, or you can use all of them in different combinations. So the first way that we call is the pre-planned area offline workflow. And again, you're using Field Maps Designer. You have some tools to sketch an area, and it can be a rectangle or an irregular area on the map. And then it will package together everything in that area. And once you share the map, that area is available for the mobile users in the app to download. So that's called the pre-planned workflow. And where I see this used is if people have typical service areas or work areas that they know their crew always work in. And another nice feature of this is they can check on an option to refresh that map package anywhere from daily to weekly, so that if you're getting a lot of edits coming in and out, you want to make sure that you're repackaging all the new data, and the mobile workers will actually get a little message saying there's a new version of this offline map available. The second area is what's called the ad hoc workflow, and this is always available to the mobile user. So when they're in Field Maps, they are able to say, for this web map, I'm going to take it offline. They're going to define their own area. And in the same way, the maps, the data, the layers, the base maps are all packaged, and then they can take it offline. And the third way is to create a mobile map package using ArcGIS Pro. This is popular for using with viewer type of users because it creates a read-only map. But again, it allows you to package a lot of data in a very small package, and users can take that offline. So the key thing to remember about this is that you need some data prep, and your mobile user needs to make sure that they get that offline area onto their device before they actually disconnect.
That's really interesting. I didn't know there were sort of 3 strategies to be able to set this up. So I'm really glad
Yeah,
you went
choices.
through those. Yeah, choices. Yay, love that.
Choices are good.
Okay, so I would admit I'm a really dumb guy. Big surprise, I know. So I really don't understand how the data synchronization works when you're between offline and online. So how does it work behind the scenes within ArcGIS Field Maps?
Well, we provide some tools right in Field Maps mobile app that are only available when you are working with a downloaded offline map. So if a mobile user was out in the field and doing their edits, they could click these sync tools at any time they have connectivity. And what that would do is take the edits on their device, which essentially you're working with a mobile geodatabase, a SQLite geodatabase, and you're saving locally. So you click sync, that will push up your edits to your feature layer, and that will be refreshed. There's options to auto sync. You turn it on in your field map settings. So on a regular interval, if your device detects a connection, field map will automatically sync. But the user actually gets information. You can see when you've done your last sync. You can see if there's any outstanding syncs in your map. So it keeps things up to date regularly, or you can sync anytime. And typically what would happen is when the mobile worker, maybe once a day, if they have a connection, when they're done all their work, they would hit that sync button, sync up all their edits. You could remove that offline area when you no longer need it, or you can download a new one when it's available to make sure you're working with the most up-to-date version.
So it seems like it's not too difficult to actually get your edits back into ArcGIS Online if you are working offline or into your portal. But how do you actually collect and edit data when you're offline in Field Maps? Is the process any different from how you normally would work?
No, it's actually not. You're working with the same set of tools you work with when you're connected. The editing experience uses the same smart forms that you author in Field Maps Designer for attribute editing, and anything such as, arcade expressions or conditional visibility. All that logic will work offline as well. So it's great. So you really won't notice any difference editing other than you are working in a smaller area. So you won't have the whole web map to pan and zoom around. You'll be restricted to that area that you clipped out. And that's really the only difference. Also, the location sharing capability, which I've used offline in my camping experience, that also works offline because that doesn't require Wi-Fi or cellular. It only requires a GPS connection, and you can use it on your device or a connected GNSS. And that will also work in the same way. It stores the location tracks on your device while you're offline, and it will do a sync when you're able to connect again.
Wow, that really makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you made that very clear. So we really appreciate that. But of course, you're a GeoGeek, and we always love to ask about the road ahead with our
Yes.
GeoGeek. So what are some future developments or enhancements that users can expect to see in the offline capabilities of ArcGIS Field Maps?
Well, we're releasing field maps about 4 times a year, so they're always adding something new to enhance this offline capability. Some of the more recent ones they've added were more offline checks, which we're looking to add even more because we're trying to help people figure out why something won't go offline. There's usually a very valid reason, and it's some kind of either a field, you don't have the right type of field. Some of the ones that are coming are like missing a global ID field or a subtype field. If you have duplicate layers, that is being checked. And I know in the October release, they are adding the ability to enforce that users have to, for a particular map, work with an offline version. And I know that's been a user request that I think they want to make sure always offline workflows are always supported, which is pretty good advice. And I also know in a future release, we're adding support for working offline with the utility network for viewing that network and for doing tracing, which right now only works online. So those are some upcoming enhancements we can look forward to.
Thanks, Sue. Exciting updates as always. And I know that the utility networks customers are going to be pretty excited about that. For those who are new to working offline, particularly in the future, those utility clients who haven't been able to work offline previously, Is there anything that they should know, organizations should know, and users before implementing this workflow? Any advice you could give them?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that my advice would be if there's any chance your mobile users are going to go offline, if you doubt that your connection will be reliable or they'll lose connectivity, I think you should plan for those offline workflows. As I explained, you do need to plan ahead and enable offline options at the very least. Or do those pre-planned offline areas or mobile map packages. So once you do that, it may seem a little intimidating, but there's lots of online resources. The help is really good. There's blogs and videos. There's actually a detailed instruction guide, a PDF called Take Your Web Maps Offline. So I think just thinking ahead and preparing and taking advantage of all the resources we provide will get people to where they need to be able to go offline in the field.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It's always good to be prepared. And I know you're always prepared. I look forward to seeing your tracks from when you come back from your backpacking. You always have your
Yeah.
field maps with you.
Yes, I will be using that for sure. And it helped me canoe in a very straight line, I tell you.
Nice. Good to
No
see that
getting
those
lost
are
for me.
working. Yeah, no more getting lost. I'm going to have to start using those apps myself. Thanks so much for sharing with us today, Sue. It's been great as always, and we can't wait to have you back again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was our mobile GIS queen, Sue Enyedy. She is a product specialist for mobile solutions at Esri Canada, and she joins us today right around the corner from me in the great city of Hamilton.